I still remember the exact moment my future drove away in a cherry red Mustang. My college fund, transformed into 420 horsepower of betrayal, wrapped in a bow with my brother's name on it. My name is Lucille, and I was 18 when I learned that family loyalty has a price tag. Isn't it beautiful? My mother's voice dripped with pride as she filmed Ruben circling the driveway. He's worked so hard. He deserves this boost before starting college. I stood frozen on our front porch, still holding the acceptance letter from Stanford that had arrived that morning. The same letter I'd planned to celebrate with them over dinner. That's my college fund, isn't it? Oh, honey. Mum's camera didn't waver from Ruben's victory lap. You're so smart. You'll figure something out. You always do. Dad cleared his throat behind me. There are plenty of good state schools, Lucy, and you can always take out loans like other kids. The engine revved as Ruben pulled up beside us. His grin was blinding. Come on, sis. Take a ride with me. I felt sick. I have work in 20 minutes. Since when do you work? Ruben laughed. Since 3 months ago, at Denny's. Not that anyone had noticed. I'd been picking up every shift I could, saving for books and supplies. What a joke that seemed now. Mum finally lowered her phone. Lucille, don't be dramatic. Your brother needs reliable transportation for college. You know how dangerous public transit can be. And my education? What about that? You're stronger than him, Dad said quietly. You can handle it. I looked between them, Mum already turning back to Ruben, Dad avoiding my eyes, my brother gunning the engine of my future. Something inside me hardened. I have to go, I said, walking toward my beaten-up Honda Civic, the one I'd bought myself with summer job money. Lucy, wait, Ruben called out. We're having cake. Mum got your favourite. I stopped. My favourite is chocolate. That German apple thing in there is yours. The silence that followed was almost satisfying. At work, I mechanically filled coffee cups and took orders, my mind racing. The numbers wouldn't stop spinning. 4 years at Stanford, 60,000 per year, my measly savings, the crushing weight of loans. More coffee, hun? A regular customer, Barbara, held up her cup. Sorry, yes. I poured, trying to steady my shaking hands. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a smile. Just college stress. You know how it is. Barbara nodded sympathetically. My daughter's applying too. These schools are so expensive now. Thank God for her college fund. We've been saving since she was born. The coffee pot nearly slipped from my grip. Must be nice, I whispered. During my break, I sat in the walk-in freezer, my unofficial crying spot, and made 3 calls. First to Stanford's financial aid office, then to a student loan provider, finally to the community college across town. My phone buzzed with a text from Ruben. Taking Melissa for a ride. She says the car is hot like me. I stared at my reflection in the freezer's steel wall. My eyes were red, but something else had changed. The hurt was still there, but now it had company. Cold, calculating anger. Order up! Jake, our cook, yelled through the window. I grabbed my notepad and stepped back into the dining room. Table 6 needed ranch dressing. Table 3 wanted their check. Normal people living normal lives while my world imploded. At midnight, I pulled into our driveway. The Mustang gleamed under the porch light, taunting me. I sat there for a long moment, then pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The savings account I'd started at 16 had exactly $3,247.82 in it. Not even enough for one semester's books. Inside, on the kitchen counter, sat a piece of untouched German apple cake with a note. Saved you a slice. Ah. I dropped the plate into the trash, note and all. In my room, I opened my laptop and started searching. Student loans, work-study programs, scholarships, anything and everything. My acceptance letter to Stanford lay crumpled beside me, a dream turned to paper. Just wait, I whispered to my dark room. One day it'll be my turn. I didn't know then how long I'd have to wait, or how complete my revenge would be when it finally came. But sitting there, surrounded by the ruins of my carefully planned future, I made myself a promise. I would never need them again. And when the day came that they needed me, because it would come, I'd remember this moment. The sound of a Mustang engine roared in the distance. My brother, still out living his best life. I opened a new spreadsheet and titled it Plan B. Ramen noodles taste different at 3 a.m. when you're studying in the break room of a 24-hour diner. They taste like necessity, like survival. "You look dead," Maria, the night cook, said as she dropped an extra egg into my cup. "Third all-nighter this week? Finals?" I highlighted another paragraph in my economics textbook. Plus morning classes, then afternoon shift here, evening shift at the library, sleep is for the week. "Girl, you're going to break yourself." Maybe I already had. 6 months into community college and I was running on caffeine and spite. But my GPA was perfect and every spare dollar went into my transfer fund. Stanford might be out of reach, but I'd found a decent business program at State that would take me after 2 years. My phone buzzed. Mom again. "Ruben made Dean's list, having a little celebration dinner tomorrow. Coming home?" I typed back. "Can't. Sick. Studying for finals." 3 dots appeared then. "Always studying. You work too hard, sweetie. Learn to enjoy life like your brother." I turned the phone face down and went back to my textbook. The words blurred together. "Hey!" A guy in a wrinkled button-down appeared at my table, clutching his own textbook. "Mind if I join? Every other seat's taken." I gestured to the empty chair, not looking up. "I'm Alejandro. Suffering through business law. Economics. Lucille." "Ah, the dismal science." He pulled out his notes. "You're in Professor Williams' class, right? I've seen you there. Always front row, always prepared." "Someone has to be." We studied in comfortable silence until my break ended. As I stood to leave, he said, "There's a study group meeting at the library tomorrow. You should come." "Can't. Working." "Both jobs?" I paused. "You know about that." Like I said, I noticed things. The group meets Thursdays too. For some reason I found myself saying, "Thursdays work." The study group became my lifeline. Alejandro brought coffee and actually funny jokes. Others brought notes and sympathy. For 3 hours each week, I felt almost normal. Until the holiday photos started arriving. "Look where your brother is." Mum's text showed Ruben on a ski slope in Aspen, perfect smile gleaming. His friend's family invited him for winter break. I was in the walk-in freezer again, but not for crying this time, just for quiet. "Lucille." It was Barbara, my regular customer. "Honey, are you okay?" "Fine." I wiped my face. "Just inventory." She wasn't buying it. "Come sit with me. I'm on break too." At her table, she pushed a piece of pie toward me. "Talk." So I did. About the college fund, the car, the endless shifts. About watching my brother's perfect life unfold on social media while I calculated how many hours of work equaled 1 textbook. "You're angry," she said finally. "I'm tired." "No." Her eyes were kind but firm. "You're angry. And you should be." Something in me cracked. They act like I'm some kind of robot, like I don't need help or support or just a damn phone call that isn't about Ruben. Then stop answering their calls. I looked up. "What?" "You're killing yourself trying to prove something to people who aren't even watching. Stop. Focus on you." That night, I missed 3 calls from Mum about Ruben's latest adventure. Instead, I went to the library with Alejandro. "You seem different," he said as we studied. "Good different." "Lighter," he smiled, "like you finally put down something heavy." My phone buzzed again. "Mom, why aren't you answering? Ruben has big news." I turned off the phone. "Very good different," Alejandro said. The semester ended. I aced my finals. No one came to see my grades posted. No celebration dinner. Just me and my 2 jobs and my slowly growing transfer fund. But something had shifted. The anger was still there, but it wasn't eating me alive anymore. It was hardening into something else, something focused. "You should come home for Christmas," Mum tried again. "Ruben misses you." "Can't," I texted back. "Picked up extra shifts, saving for next semester." "Always about money with you," she replied. "Family should come first." I stared at those words for a long time before typing, "Yes, it should." Then I blocked their numbers. Alejandro found me in the library later. "Want to get coffee? You look like you could use a break." "Actually," I said, "I could use a friend." He smiled. "You've already got one." Outside, snow was falling. Somewhere in Aspen, my brother was probably still skiing. But for the first time in months, I didn't care. I had my books, my jobs, my perfect GPA, and now maybe a real friend. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Graduation day at State University. My name echoed across the auditorium. Lucille Newman, summa cum laude. I crossed the stage, accepted my diploma, and searched the crowd. They were there, third row, centre, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Mum fiddling with her phone, Dad checking his watch, Reuben holding up his camera with visible boredom. "Smile, sis," he called out, barely looking through the viewfinder. I didn't. After the ceremony, they found me in the crowd. Mum's hug was stiff, performative. "We're so proud," she said, eyes already scanning the parking lot. "Though you could have picked a shorter ceremony. Reuben's missing an important networking event to be here. Nobody asked him to come." "Family supports family," Dad muttered, but wouldn't meet my eyes. Reuben lowered his camera. "Got some great shots. I'll post them on my new lifestyle blog. My followers will love the whole supportive brother angle." I stared at him. "You're what?" "My brand. I'm becoming an influencer. You know, luxury lifestyle content. Mum and Dad helped me set up my studio." Of course they did. "Speaking of support," Mum cut in, "we should discuss your plans. Moving back home would help you save money while you job hunt." "I start at Morgan Stanley next month, in Chicago." Silence. "Chicago?" Dad frowned. "That's so far." "That's the point." More silence. "Well," Reuben said brightly, "at least let me post these pics. Family success story and all that." "No?" "Come on, it'll be great content." "I said no!" I turned to leave, but Mum grabbed my arm. "Lucille, don't be difficult. Your brother's trying to build something here." I pulled away. "Goodbye, Mom." "That's it," Reuben called after me. "No celebration dinner?" I kept walking. 2 weeks later, I was unpacking in my tiny Chicago studio when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Lucille Newman?" "Yes." "This is Margaret Walsh from First National Trust. I'm calling about your Aunt Patricia's estate." I sat down. "I'm sorry, my what?" "Your Aunt Patricia. She passed away last month. She left you a small trust fund." "There must be a mistake. I don't have an Aunt Patricia." "Patricia Newman? Your father's sister?" Memory flickered. "A Christmas card once, years ago." Dad had thrown it away, muttering about family disappointments. The trust wasn't huge, $40,000, but it was mine. No strings, no guilt, no family drama, just a gift from someone who'd apparently understood what it meant to walk away. I called Alejandro that night. He'd moved to New York after graduation, but we still talked weekly. "A secret aunt?" He laughed. "That's some telenovela stuff right there." "Dad never mentioned her." I had to Google her obituary. I paused. "She was a financial advisor. Built her own firm from nothing. Sounds familiar." "She never married, never had kids. Dad called her selfish." "Also sounds familiar?" "Shut up." But I was smiling. "I just wish I'd known her. Maybe she knew you, better than you think." The next day, I opened an investment account. Aunt Patricia's money would grow. I'd make sure of it. Months passed. I threw myself into work, making a name at Morgan Stanley. My boss, Paige, took me under her wing. "You've got an edge," she told me during my first review. "Something driving you." "Just ambitious." "No." She studied me. "You're building armour. Question is, what are you protecting yourself from?" I didn't answer. That night, scrolling through social media, I saw Reuben's latest post. Him posing beside a rented Ferrari, caption reading, "Living my best life. Blessed under you luxury lifestyle." The comments were gushing. Mum's especially. So proud of my baby boy, following his dreams. I closed the app and opened my investment portfolio instead. The numbers were growing. Steady, quiet growth while Reuben chased likes and Mom chased his shadow. My phone buzzed. A text from an old high school classmate. "Hey, weird question. Did you know your brother's trying to start some luxury consulting business? He hit me up for a loan. Seemed desperate." I screenshotted the message. Another buzz. "Alejandro, you free this weekend? I'm in Chicago for work." "Always free for you." "Good. Because I have news about that real estate law project I mentioned." I smiled. Alejandro had been dropping hints about some opportunity, something that would need my financial background. "Buy me dinner," I texted back, "and I'll listen to your pitch." My phone lit up one more time. Mum. Thinking of you. Ruben's having a brand launch party next month. He'd love to have his successful sister there for photos. I didn't respond. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Besides, I was building something else now, something they'd never see coming. Your brother's empire is crumbling, Alejandro said, sliding his phone across the restaurant table. Check his latest numbers. I scrolled through Ruben's social media analytics. Engagement down 70%. Sponsorships cancelled. Comment sections filled with accusations of fake luxury lifestyle posts. Turns out you can't build a brand on borrowed watches and rented cars forever, I said, handing the phone back. That's not all. Alejandro leaned forward. My firm handled 3 of his rejected loan applications last month. He's underwater on credit cards and that fancy car lease. Defaulted. I sipped my wine, savouring the information like a fine vintage. And our parents? Remortgaged their house 6 months ago, probably to bail him out. Perfect. My phone buzzed. Speaking of the devil, Mom calling. Take it, Alejandro said. Could be interesting, I answered on speaker. Hello? Lucille! Oh, thank goodness. I've been thinking about you so much lately. It's been 2 years, Mom. Has it? Time flies. How's Chicago? Still at that investment place? Morgan Stanley? Yes, I'm a senior analyst now. That's nice. She paused. Actually, I'm calling because your father and I miss you. And Ruben. He talks about you all the time. Alejandro rolled his eyes. Really? I kept my voice neutral. Last I saw, he was busy being an influencer. Oh, well, that's taking a break. The market's so saturated, you know. But he's got amazing new opportunities coming up. He's going into real estate development. I caught Alejandro's eye. Here it comes. Actually, Mum continued, we're having a family dinner next weekend. Would you come? Ruben has something important to discuss. I'm pretty busy. Please, Lucille. Family should stick together during transitions. The desperation in her voice was delicious. Send me the details, I said. I'll check my calendar. After hanging up, Alejandro shook his head. They're setting you up. Obviously. You know what they want. Money. I smiled. Or more specifically, my credit score. Are you going? Of course. I reached for the wine bottle. I've been waiting years for this dinner. The following weekend, I pulled up to my parents' house in my new Mercedes. The contrast with Ruben's conspicuously absent luxury cars was striking. Mum opened the door before I could knock. Lucille, you look expensive. Senior analyst, remember? The house smelled like my childhood. Mum's lasagna, her go-to manipulation meal. Dad hovered awkwardly in the living room. Princess! He moved for a hug, but stopped short. Nice car out there. Thanks. Paid cash? Their expressions were priceless. Ruben bounded down the stairs, designer clothes somehow looking cheaper than before. Sis, you made it. Wouldn't miss it. Over dinner, the performance began. Mum reminiscing about childhood memories. Dad praising my business sense. Ruben telling sanitized versions of his influencer downfall. But that's all behind me now, he announced. I found my true calling. Luxury real estate development. Really? I cut my lasagna. Interesting market for that. That's what I wanted to discuss. He leaned forward. I found this amazing property. Waterfront, modern design, incredible potential. The perfect starter mansion for my new brand. Mum beamed. Dad studied his plate. Sounds expensive, I said. Well, yes. Ruben laughed nervously. But with the right investment partners. He means family partners, Mum interjected. Supporting each other's dreams. I set down my fork. How much? The house is listed at 2.8 million, Ruben said quickly. But I only need a co-signer. The bank loves my business plan. They just want extra security. Because of your credit score? Silence fell. Lucille, Mum warned. No, it's okay, Ruben said. I've had some setbacks, but this is different. This is real investment, not social media stuff. I've learned my lesson. Have you? People make mistakes, Dad finally spoke. Family helps family recover. I looked around the table. Mum's pleading eyes, Dad's discomfort, Ruben's practiced sincerity. 3 people who'd never helped me recover from their mistakes. Send me the paperwork, I said. I'll review it. Really? Ruben's face lit up. Really? Alejandro's text read later that night. Trust me, I replied. Everything's going according to plan. My phone buzzed again. Mum. Thank you for considering this. You've always been the strong one. I thought of Aunt Patricia's trust fund, quietly multiplied through careful investment, of the connections I'd built at Morgan Stanley, of the legal groundwork Alejandro had laid. Yes, I texted back. I am. Strong enough to wait for the perfect moment, strong enough to make it hurt. This is it! Ruben spread his arms wide, spinning in the empty great room of the waterfront mansion. My future empire starts here. The real estate agent, Tracy, hovered nearby with a practised smile. The views are spectacular, and the private dock can accommodate up to a 50-foot yacht. Mum touched the marble countertops reverently. It's perfect for your brand relaunch, honey. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, studying the water below. What's the asking price again? 2.8 million, Tracy said. But there's already been significant interest from qualified buyers. I turned, eyebrow raised. Tracy's smile flickered. Lucille, Mom hissed. Don't be rude. Just doing due diligence. I pulled out my phone. Mind if my attorney reviews the paperwork? Attorney? Ruben's confidence wavered. It's a standard mortgage, sis. Alejandro specializes in real estate law. He's on standby. Mum intervened smoothly. Let's discuss details over lunch. I packed your favourite. Remember those picnics we used to have? German apple cake? I asked innocently. She flushed. Well, no, but... Tracy, I cut in. Could you walk me through the property taxes and HOA fees? The numbers were exactly what I expected. Astronomical. Ruben's eyes glazed over as Tracy detailed the costs, but I caught every figure, every trap. Perhaps we should discuss financing, Tracy suggested diplomatically. Ruben brightened. My sister's a financial genius. Senior analyst at Morgan Stanley. Really? Tracy's interest sharpened. And you'll be co-signing? We're reviewing options, I said. My phone buzzed. Alejandro. Got the preliminary paperwork. This is worse than we thought. Call me. Excuse me, I stepped onto the balcony. Work call. It's a disaster, Alejandro said when I answered. The down payment alone would drain him. Monthly payments are triple his documented income. Perfect. Lucille? Are you sure about this? I watched through the window as Ruben gestured excitedly, probably planning where his YouTube studio would go. Absolutely sure. Back inside, Mum was already planning the housewarming party. Dad had finally arrived, looking uncomfortable as usual. There you are. Ruben grabbed my arm. Come see the master suite. It's influencer heaven. The bedroom was bigger than my first apartment. Ruben bounced on the massive bed while Tracy detailed the custom closets. Just imagine the content I could create here, he gushed. My followers will go crazy. All 12,000 of them, I muttered. What? Nothing, I smiled. When do you need an answer about co-signing? Tracy stepped forward. The sellers want to move quickly. Perhaps we could... Let's discuss it over dinner, Mum interrupted. I made reservations at that lovely Italian place. At the restaurant, the performance reached its peak. Mum ordered expensive wine. Dad actually participated in conversation. Ruben was on his best behaviour. Remember when Lucille used to help me with math? He said, laying it on thick. She always knew how to explain things. You were a terrible student, I replied. But you never gave up on me. He raised his glass. To family! Mum wiped away a tear. Dad cleared his throat. My phone buzzed again. Alejandro. Modified contract ready. Just say when. Speaking of family, Mum set down her wine. We should discuss the practical details. Yes, I said. Let's. The bank needs some reassurance, Ruben began. Just a signature, really. You won't be responsible for anything. Except if you default. Silence. Which won't happen, Mum jumped in. Your brother has learned so much from his experiences. Has he? I turned to Ruben. Tell me about your business plan. Well, luxury real estate content is huge right now. I'll do house tours, lifestyle videos, maybe some coaching. With what audience? I'm rebuilding. This house is the foundation. Of more debt? Lucille, Dad warned. I pulled out my phone. Let me show you something. I opened his credit report, legally obtained through my banking connections. Want to explain these numbers? Reuben paled. Mum reached for more wine. I can explain. You don't have to, I said calmly, because I'm going to help you. Hope bloomed on their faces. Really? Reuben's eyes watered. Sis, I knew you'd understand. I'll co-sign. Mum actually clapped. But, I continued, I have conditions. My lawyer will draw up the paperwork. Lawyer? Dad frowned. It's just a mortgage. I smiled. Nothing is ever just anything. My phone buzzed one final time. Alejandro. Contract ready. Are you sure you want to do this? I looked at my family's eager faces and typed back, They taught me well. Always get everything in writing. The trap was set. Now to watch them walk right into it. The bank's conference room felt like a theatre stage. Nancy, the loan officer, arranged documents with practiced precision while Reuben bounced in his chair like a kid at Christmas. Just a few signatures, Nancy said, and we can proceed with the mortgage. Mum squeezed Reuben's shoulder. This is such a special moment. Very special, I agreed, setting my briefcase on the table. Nancy, I have some additional paperwork to include. Additional? Mum's smile faltered. Just a side agreement between siblings. I pulled out Alejandro's contract. Standard protection clauses. Nancy adjusted her glasses. The bank's documentation is comprehensive. This is separate. A private contract between my brother and me. Reuben barely glanced at it. Whatever you need, sis. Where do I sign? Perhaps we should review it first, Dad suggested. It's simple. I slid the contract across the table. I'm co-signing with specific conditions. If Reuben misses any payments, the house and all associated assets transfer directly to me. The room went silent. That's... Mum started. Standard practice, I finished. Ask Nancy. Nancy nodded reluctantly. Co-signers often include protection clauses. But family is different, Mum protested. Exactly why we need everything in writing. I turned to Reuben. Unless you're planning to default. Of course not. He laughed nervously. This is my dream. I'll never miss a payment. Then there's no problem. Dad picked up the contract. No grace periods. No payment plans. He deserves a boost, I quoted, watching Mom flinch. Isn't that what we believe in? Reuben grabbed a pen. It doesn't matter. I've got this all figured out. My new business plan. Sign or don't, I interrupted. But I won't co-sign without this agreement. Nancy cleared her throat. We should proceed if we want to close today. Mum tried one last time. Lucille, surely we can discuss. No discussion needed. Reuben scrawled his signature. See? Done. Now you sign, sis. I signed slowly, savouring each letter. Nancy notarized both contracts. Congratulations, she said. You're now officially co-owners of 47 Lakefront Drive. Reuben whooped and hugged me. This is going to be amazing. Wait till you see what I do with the place. I patted his back stiffly. I'm sure I will. Outside the bank, Mum pulled me aside. That contract was cruel. Cruel would be enabling him without consequences. We're family. Yes, I cut her off. We are. And family deserves honesty, right? So honestly, Mum, he'll default within 6 months. You don't know that. His credit report says otherwise. His failed business says otherwise. But don't worry. I'll take good care of the house when it's mine. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. You planned this. Did I? Or did you teach me how family helps family? Dad appeared behind her. The realtor's waiting, Catherine. I watched them hurry to their car. Mum already on the phone, probably planning the housewarming party. Reuben was taking selfies by the bank's sign. My phone buzzed. Alejandro. Done? Signed and notarized. You know he'll never keep up those payments. That's the point. What happens when they figure it out? I watched Reuben pose for another photo. They won't. Not until it's too late. That night, I received dozens of messages. Photos of Reuben with his new house keys. Mum's lengthy thank you text about family bonds. Dad's awkward attempt at an emoji. I ignored them all and opened my investment portfolio instead. The numbers were solid. More than enough to cover the mortgage when, not if, Reuben defaulted. Paige, my boss, had questioned my strategy over lunch last week. You're risking a lot on revenge, she'd said. Not revenge, I corrected. Investment. Now watching Reuben's first house tour video go live, Incredible mansion tour. My new life begins. I felt nothing but calm certainty. The video showed him bouncing through empty rooms, making grand plans. And here's where the streaming setup will go. Once the brand deals start rolling in, comments were already appearing. How can you afford this? Didn't your last business fail? Is this another fake flex? I closed the app and texted Nancy. Keep me updated on the payment schedule. Will do, she replied. Though between us, I give it 4 months max. I smiled and opened my calendar, counting the days until the first mortgage payment was due. Reuben had no idea he'd just signed away his future. But then again, he'd never understood the true cost of things. That was about to change. The first payment bounced exactly 47 days after closing. Just a bank error! Reuben's voice crackled through my phone. I'll fix it tomorrow. The second payment never came. By day 90, Nancy's updates became daily. Final notice sent. No response to calls. Foreclosure proceedings beginning. On day 103, Mum called. He's trying his best, she pleaded. The brand deals fell through, but he has leads. The contract was clear. He just needs more time. Your father and I could help, but after remortgaging our house for his last venture. Not my problem. He's your brother. Was he my brother when you spent my college fund on his car? Silence. Then quietly, you've been waiting for this, haven't you? 4 years, 2 months and 17 days, but who's counting? The foreclosure notice arrived on a Tuesday. I had it framed. Reuben's social media went dark after his tearful emergency truth about my mansion. Video flopped. The comments were brutal. Called it another fake influencer. Must be nice having rich parents to bail you out. Karma's real, bro. On day 120, I pulled into the mansion's circular driveway. Reuben's latest borrowed luxury car was gone, replaced by our parents' aging sedan. Mum opened the door before I knocked. Her eyes were red. Here to gloat? Here to collect? Dad appeared behind her. The lawyers say we might have grounds to contest. No, I cut him off. You don't. But please, waste more money trying. The house was a mess. Half-finished influencer rooms with ring lights and backdrop walls, empty energy drink cans, unpaid bills scattered across imported marble counters. Where's Reuben? Upstairs, Mum whispered. Packing. I climbed the sweeping staircase, each step echoing with satisfaction. Found him in the master suite, surrounded by designer clothes with tags still attached. Come to kick me out personally? The sheriff will handle that next week. He looked up, eyes wet. I really thought I could do it this time. No, you didn't. You thought someone would save you, like always. Mum and Dad are broke because of you. I'll pay everyone back. I've got new opportunities. Stop! I held up my hand. Just stop, he deflated. What happens now? Now? I smiled. Now you leave. The house is mine. You planned this. Yes. Why? I walked to the window, my window now. Remember that red Mustang? What? That was years ago. That was my future you drove away in? This? I gestured around the room. This is karma. It was just a car. No. I turned back to him. It was a choice. Mum and Dad chose you over and over, and now I'm choosing me. The doorbell rang. That's my attorney, I said. Time to sign the transfer papers. I could fight this. With what money? Downstairs, Alejandro had spread documents across the kitchen island. Mum was crying softly. Dad stared at his shoes. Sign here, Alejandro pointed. And here. Initial here. Reuben's hand shook. What about my stuff? You have 48 hours to remove personal items, Alejandro replied. Anything left becomes Ms. Newman's property. Mum stepped forward. Lucille, please. Don't! My voice could have frozen fire. Don't you dare ask for mercy now. We're your family. No. You're the people who taught me that family means nothing without leverage. Reuben signed the last page. Alejandro notarized it. It's done, he announced. I picked up the papers. You can all leave now. Where am I supposed to go? Reuben asked. There's always the guest room at Mom and Dad's. Oh, wait. I pretended to remember. They remortgaged the house for your last failure, didn't they? Mum grabbed her purse. You've become cruel. I've become successful. Isn't that what you wanted? They filed out slowly, Reuben last carrying one designer duffel bag. Sis! He tried one more time. I'm sorry about the car. About everything. No, you're not. You're sorry you finally lost. The door closed behind them. Alejandro touched my shoulder. You okay? I looked around my new house, all 6,000 square feet of revenge served cold. I've never been better. Through the window, I watched them pile into Dad's car. No more borrowed luxury vehicles, no more fake lifestyle posts. Just reality, finally catching up. Mum looked back once. I raised my hand in a small wave. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Nancy, transfer complete. List it for sale tomorrow. Already have interested buyers, she replied. At a significant profit. Perfect. Because this was never about the house. It was about watching them walk away with nothing. Just like I had, that day in the Denny's parking lot. My morning coffee was interrupted by Paige dropping a file on my desk. Interesting application came across my desk, she said. Thought you should see it. I opened the folder and froze. There, under previous experience, was my brother's name. He applied for the junior analyst position, Paige continued. Said he has a sister in finance who could vouch for him. I closed the file. No. That's what I thought. She perched on my desk. But there's more. Your mother left 3 messages with HR about setting up an interview. Of course she did. My phone buzzed. Mom. Please just talk to the hiring manager. He's changed. He needs this. I deleted the message and turned to Paige. Handle it however you want. Already did. But that's not why I'm here. She studied me carefully. The board approved your promotion to managing director. What? Youngest in the firm's history. You've earned it. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty. That evening I met Alejandro at our usual bar. Managing director. He raised his glass. Congratulations. Thanks. I stared at my untouched drink. Reuben applied for a job at my firm. Bold move. Desperate move. He's been couch surfing since the house sold. And your parents? Downsized to a condo. Dad took a second job. Alejandro leaned forward. You got what you wanted. Why don't you seem happy? Because... I struggled with the words. Because winning feels different than I thought it would. Different how? Empty. I finally took a sip. Like I spent years building this perfect revenge, and now you have to live with it? Yeah. He pulled out his phone. Speaking of living with things, remember that real estate project I mentioned? The community development thing? We're breaking ground next month. Affordable housing for students. Full scholarship program included. I raised an eyebrow. And we need a financial partner who understands the value of education. The irony wasn't lost on me. Using my revenge money to fund scholarships? I laughed. That's a bit on the nose. Better than letting it eat you alive. My phone buzzed again. A text from Dad. I know we don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm proud of what you've become, even if it was in spite of us. Then another. Your Aunt Patricia would be proud too. I showed Alejandro the messages. Well, he asked. Well, what? Are you going to let them keep living in your head rent-free, or are you going to build something better? I thought about my new office, the promotion, the empty victory. Show me the project proposal, I said. He smiled and pulled out his laptop. It's a partnership with State University, 20 units, full ride for students who maintain a 3.5 GPA. As he talked, another text arrived. Reuben. Congratulations on managing director. You deserved it. All of it. I'm sorry I never saw that before. I started typing a response, then stopped. What's wrong? Alejandro asked. Just realizing something. I put my phone away. Revenge feels good for a moment. Building something feels good forever. So show me where to sign. The scholarship program launched 3 months later. No fancy ceremony, no social media posts, no family drama, just quiet impact. My phone still buzzes with family messages. Mum still tries to fix things. Reuben still looks for shortcuts. Dad still sends awkward emojis. But now? Their messages land differently, because while they're stuck in the same old patterns, I'm building something new. Something that turns old wounds into future opportunities. Paige caught me reviewing scholarship applications late one night. This is different than revenge, she noted. Better different, I replied, thinking of Alejandro's words from years ago. You know, she said carefully, healing doesn't mean you have to let them back in. I know. I picked up another application. But it does mean I get to choose what to build next. My phone buzzed. Another text from Ruben. Got a job, a real one. Starting at the bottom this time. For the first time in years, I wrote back. Good. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't family reunion time. It was just letting go. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something so good, so solid, that the past becomes nothing but a foundation for something better. I signed the last scholarship approval and looked out my office window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my brother was starting over. Somewhere out there, my parents were learning hard lessons. And here I was, finally building something that wasn't about them at all. It was about what came next. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.
He's working late again. Dear Margaret, my mother-in-law said sweetly over the phone. You know how demanding his clients are. I looked at the security camera feed on my laptop. My husband, David's car, was parked outside a fancy apartment building across town. Of course, Margaret. Thanks for telling me. My name is Olivia. I'm 34, and I'm watching my 10-year marriage fall apart, piece by piece. The worst part isn't just that David is cheating. It's that his whole family, especially his mother, is helping him lie about it. You should try to understand, Margaret went on, her voice full of fake sympathy. Running a law firm is stressful. Sometimes he needs relief. I muted the call and laughed bitterly. Relief? Was that what they were calling his 26-year-old paralegal now? I unmuted. You're right, Margaret. I'm sure David is very stressed. On the screen, I saw the young woman get into his car. Right on time. That's the spirit, dear. Just be patient. He always comes home, doesn't he? Yes, he did. Smelling like expensive perfume we couldn't afford on just his salary. I glanced at my second screen, spreadsheets of every suspicious transaction, every late-night meeting, every lie. I appreciate your concern, Margaret, but I have to go. Work is calling. I hung up before she could reply. My eyes stayed on the screen as David's car drove away. 3 months ago, I would have cried. 3 months ago, I still believed his excuses. But that was before I found a marriage registration form for Thailand in his briefcase. Before I learned he planned to marry his mistress without divorcing me or splitting our assets. My phone buzzed. A message from my private investigator. Meeting confirmed, full proof collected. I smiled. David had no idea about the hidden camera in his office. The one that caught him telling his mistress just yesterday. Once we're married in Thailand, Olivia won't know anything. The house, the firm's assets, they'll all stay mine. My laptop dinged, an email from our accountant confirming the shady transactions I had flagged. David thought he was being sneaky, moving money into a secret account. He didn't realize I had been tracking every dollar for months. That evening, Margaret called again, her voice smug. David just called me. He's closing a huge case tonight. Isn't it wonderful how hard he works? I pulled up a hotel receipt on my screen, a luxury suite booked under his company card. Yes, Margaret. Really wonderful. You know, Olivia, she hesitated, pretending to care. If you put more effort into your looks, maybe you wouldn't work such long hours. I thought about my designer clothes, my daily gym sessions, my successful career. None of it mattered to Margaret. To her, I would never be good enough for her son. Maybe you're right, I said, keeping my voice steady. I should probably focus more on myself. She didn't catch the hidden meaning in my words. She never did. Later that night, I got a text from David's sister, Emma. Hey Liv, we need to talk. It's about David. I called her immediately. Emma was different from the rest of the family, less willing to lie. I can't stay quiet anymore, she blurted out. David's planning something awful. He and Mom, they're hiding money. He's marrying that girl in Thailand next month. Since there's no legal divorce or asset split, they think you'll get nothing. I leaned back, sipping my coffee. I know, Emma. You know, she sounded shocked. I've known for months. I'm gathering proof. Will you make a statement about what you've seen? Silence. Then, yes. What they're doing is wrong, Liv. I'll help. After the call, I sat in the dark, thinking about all the lies David and his family had told. They thought they were smart. They had no idea I was ahead of them. My phone buzzed again. Margaret, probably with another excuse. I ignored it. Soon, they'd all realize just how badly they had underestimated me. The front door opened. David walked in, trying to be quiet. I cleared my screens and put on my usual act. Working late again. I called out. He stopped in the doorway, loosening his tie, flashing a guilty smile. Big case. You know how it is. I smiled back. Of course. Your mother called to tell me. His shoulders relaxed. Good old Margaret, always covering for him. If only they knew what was coming. Everything changed 3 weeks later when Margaret made her first mistake. I was reviewing security footage in my office when she called, her voice unusually agitated. Olivia, dear, I need you to sign some papers for the firm. Just some routine documents. I can bring them by today. I smiled, knowing exactly what those routine documents were. My PI had already obtained copies, transfer of ownership forms that would remove my name from our joint properties. All part of David's careful plan to leave me with nothing. Of course, Margaret, I'm working from home today. Stop by any time. She arrived an hour later, clutching a manila envelope and wearing her fakest smile. I'd set up a hidden camera in the living room, ready to capture everything. These just need your signature, she said, spreading the papers on the coffee table. David mentioned you've been so busy lately, he didn't want to bother you with paperwork. I picked up the first document, pretending to read it carefully. How thoughtful of him. And you bringing these by yourself. Well, you know how it is. Family helping family. She patted my hand condescendingly. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Before I sign, Margaret, could you explain exactly what these documents are for? She shifted uncomfortably. Just routine property transfers, dear. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about? I met her eyes steadily, like David's upcoming trip to Thailand. Nothing to worry about there either. The color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen was a video of David and his mistress in his office, discussing their marriage plans. Margaret's hands began to shake. How did you? I know everything, Margaret. The affair, the hidden assets, the plans for a secret marriage. I have proof of all of it. I started playing another video, this one of Margaret herself, helping David move money between accounts. You've been spying on us? Her voice rose with indignation. No, Margaret. I've been protecting myself. Did you really think I was that stupid, that naive? She stood up abruptly, gathering the papers. You'll regret this. David will never forgive you for going behind his back. I laughed, actually laughed. Like he went behind mine? Like you helped him do it? Does Emma know about all of this too? At the mention of Emma, Margaret froze. Leave your sister-in-law out of this. Too late. She came to me weeks ago, told me everything. She's willing to testify about what you and David planned. Margaret sank back onto the couch, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. He's my son. I was protecting him. No, you were helping him commit fraud. Would you like to see the evidence I've gathered? The bank records? The hotel receipts? The property transfer documents you tried to hide? Tears began to form in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. This woman had spent years undermining me, helping her son deceive me, all while pretending to be a caring mother-in-law. What do you want? She whispered. I want you to call David. Right now. Tell him to come home immediately. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. I listened as she made the call, her voice breaking as she told him it was an emergency. Within 20 minutes, I heard his car in the driveway. David burst through the door, then stopped short at the scene before him. His mother in tears, me calmly sitting with a laptop full of evidence. What's going on? He demanded. Show him, Margaret said quietly. I turned the laptop toward him and started playing the videos. One after another, irrefutable proof of his deception. His face went from anger to shock to fear. How long have you known? He finally asked. Long enough to document everything. The affair, the fraud, the plans for Thailand. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Now it just seemed pathetic. Olivia, we can talk about this. No, David, we can't. But your lawyer can talk to mine. I handed him a business card. Everything goes through them now. You'll ruin him, Margaret protested weakly. No, Margaret. You and David did that yourselves. I just gathered the evidence. David started pacing, his legal mind probably racing through scenarios. The firm will survive, but not with you at the helm. The partners might be interested in knowing how you've been mishandling client funds to finance your affair. His face went pale. You wouldn't. Try me. I stood up, gathering my laptop. I've arranged for a hotel room. You can stay here tonight, pack your things. But tomorrow, I want you gone. Margaret stood too, her earlier confidence replaced by defeat. All this time we thought. You thought I was weak, naive, easy to manipulate. I smiled. That was your first mistake. The aftermath unfolded exactly as I planned. 2 days after the confrontation, Margaret called me in tears. David's mistress left him, she sobbed. She said she didn't sign up for all this drama. How could you do this to him? I sat in my office, reviewing the latest documents from my lawyer. I didn't do anything to him, Margaret. He did this to himself. You helped. He's staying with me now, she continued. He's devastated. The partners are reviewing his position at the firm. Because of the evidence I sent them about his misuse of client funds, I kept my voice calm. That was his choice, too. She was quiet for a moment. I never thought it would end like this. No, you thought it would end with me penniless and alone while your son started a new life. How's that working out? The line went dead. Emma came to see me the next day, bringing coffee and a hesitant smile. The family's in chaos, she said, settling onto my couch. Mom's beside herself. David's career is imploding, and his mistress is apparently already dating someone else. And how are you? I asked, genuinely curious. She'd taken a big risk coming forward. Relieved, actually. She sipped her coffee. I've spent years watching them manipulate people, always getting away with it. It was exhausting. I nodded, understanding completely. Thank you, Emma. Your statement to the lawyers made a difference. I just told the truth. Finally, she paused. Mom's not speaking to me now. Give her time. She's learning actions have consequences. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. David, facing potential disbarment and criminal charges for financial misconduct, agreed to my terms without argument. The prenup he tried to circumvent with his Thailand scheme now worked against him. I got the house, half the firm's value, and a clear conscience. His mistress, the young paralegal, found a new job at a different firm. Last I heard, she was dating one of the partners there. David's careful plans had crumbled so completely, it was almost sad. Almost. Margaret tried to salvage things one last time, showing up at my door unannounced. We're still family, she pleaded. Can't we just forget all this unpleasantness? I looked at the woman who had enabled her son's worst behaviors, who had helped him try to destroy me, who had spent years undermining my marriage while pretending to support it. No, Margaret, we're not family. We never really were. You made sure of that. I was protecting my son. You were protecting his lies. There's a difference. I started to close the door, then paused. You know what the saddest part is? If you'd raised him to be honest, to face consequences, he might not be in this situation now. 6 months later, I sat in my newly redecorated living room with Emma, sharing a bottle of wine and catching up. David had taken a job at a small firm in another state, his reputation in tatters. Margaret had thrown herself into church activities, telling anyone who would listen about her ungrateful former daughter-in-law who had destroyed her family. Mom still doesn't get it, Emma said, shaking her head. She actually asked me yesterday if I thought you'd consider dropping the charges if David apologized. I couldn't help but laugh. Some people never learn. But some do. Emma raised her glass. To new beginnings. And to facing consequences, I added, clinking my glass against hers. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. David's met someone new. A nice girl who understands family loyalty. I hope you're happy with what you've done. I showed it to Emma, who rolled her eyes. Want to tell her about the background check you ran on the nice girl who's actually married? No, I smiled, deleting the message. Let them figure it out themselves this time. Looking around my peaceful home, I felt nothing but relief. The evidence I'd gathered was safely stored away, a reminder that I wasn't the naive wife they thought I was. The firm was thriving under new leadership, my career was soaring, and I had kept the one worthwhile relationship from my marriage, my friendship with Emma. You know, Emma said thoughtfully, you taught me something important through all this. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you the bad guy. Sometimes it makes you the hero of your own story. I thought about the months of careful planning, the evidence gathering, the quiet strength it took to wait for the right moment. I thought about Margaret's tears, David's shocked face, and the collapse of their carefully constructed lies. Not the hero, I corrected her. Just someone who finally stopped accepting the role of victim. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm glow through windows that were finally truly mine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. Where are the papers? Show us the marriage certificate. Amanda's voice sliced through the warmth of our Christmas dinner, shattering the cheerful atmosphere. She stood at the head of the table, manicured nails digging into the polished mahogany surface, her eyes glinting with triumph. I bet you can't, because they don't exist. The room fell into a stunned silence. I set my fork down carefully, dabbing my napkin against my lips as 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Beside me, my husband, Michael, stiffened, his face paling. Across the table, my mother-in-law, Margaret, wore that thin, knowing smile, the one I come to despise over the last 5 years. Amanda, that's enough, Michael began, but she waved him off. No, Michael, we've all had enough. 5 years of watching her pretend to be part of this family. 5 years of lies. Show us the proof, Diana. Prove you're really married to my brother. I met her gaze steadily, then let my eyes sweep the room. Some of the family members looked horrified. Others, like Margaret, barely concealed their anticipation. I knew this moment had been orchestrated, the perfect scene set to humiliate me in front of everyone. Well, Amanda pressed, arms folded. We're waiting. I exhaled softly, then reached for my phone, my movements deliberate. The silence deepened as I scrolled through my contacts and tapped a number. Amanda's smirk faltered as I placed the call on speaker. Diana, came the smooth, familiar voice of James Peterson. I wasn't expecting a call from you on Christmas Day. I'm sorry to interrupt your holiday, James, I said, my voice even. But we have an interesting situation here. My sister-in-law seems to believe that my marriage to Michael doesn't legally exist. A beat of silence. Then a low chuckle. Ah, so they finally made their move. Margaret's smile stiffened. Amanda's smugness evaporated. Who is that? Amanda snapped. James Peterson, he replied, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. Lead partner at Peterson & Associates. Diana's personal attorney for the last 6 years. And I must say, this is quite the development, though not entirely unexpected. Michael turned to me, his brow furrowed. I kept my focus on Amanda. James, would you mind confirming something for my sister-in-law? I asked. She insists there's no legal record of my marriage to Michael. Certainly. The rustling of papers carried through the speaker. Marriage certificate filed and registered June 15th, 5 years ago. Joint accounts, property agreements, all documented and legally binding. Would you like me to email copies to the family? Amanda had gone ghostly pale. Across the table, Margaret gripped her water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. That's impossible, Amanda sputtered. We checked the records. There was nothing. Yes, James mused. Your little courthouse search last month. Interesting timing. We were, of course, notified. And you see, when there are concerns about tampering, we take precautions. Understanding dawned in Michael's eyes. He now realized why I'd insisted on handling our legal matters myself, why I'd been so meticulous. Margaret's voice, usually so controlled, wavered. Diana, what is the meaning of this? I met her gaze and smiled, the same cold, polite smile she had given me for years. It's quite simple, Margaret. I've known all along that you and Amanda were trying to erase my marriage. The misplaced documents, the rumors, the little suggestions to Michael about keeping assets separate just in case. I reached into my bag and placed a sealed envelope on the table. I documented everything, every attempt, every inquiry, every conveniently lost file. And now that you've finally shown your hand, I nudged the envelope toward her. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about respect and boundaries. Silence. Amanda stood frozen, her confidence shattered. Margaret eyed the envelope as if it were a snake poised to strike. Michael slid his hand into mine under the table, his grip firm, reassuring. James spoke again, his voice light but edged with something unmistakable. Oh, and before I go, I've prepared a complete file detailing every instance of interference with Diana and Michael's marriage records. Should anything unfortunate happen to any legal documents in the future, well, let's just say it would raise some very interesting legal questions. I ended the call with a polite, "Merry Christmas, James," before turning back to my stunned audience. "Now," I said, picking up my fork, "shall we continue with dinner? I believe dessert is about to be served." The days after Christmas dinner passed in an eerie quiet. No calls from Margaret. No passive-aggressive texts from Amanda. The family group chat, normally a steady stream of messages, photos, and updates, had gone silent. Even Michael seemed distant, lost in thought as he processed everything that had come to light. It wasn't until 3 nights later, as we sat together in the living room, that he finally voiced the question I'd been expecting. "How long have you known?" His voice was quiet, almost hesitant, about what they were trying to do. I closed my book, setting it aside before turning to face him. "Do you remember, 3 months after our wedding, when the courthouse called to verify our marriage license because the original had gone missing?" He frowned, nodding slowly. "Yeah, they said it was misfiled, right?" "No," I held his gaze. "Margaret convinced a clerk to help her check our records. The original disappeared during that check. If I hadn't already filed copies with James, it would have been gone for good." Michael exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair, a telltale sign of his distress. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?" I asked gently. "Every time I tried to bring up your mother's behavior, you told me I was overreacting, that she just needed time to adjust." He flinched, guilt flickering across his face. "I should have listened. I never thought they'd go that far." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from Amanda. "We need to talk. Alone." I showed Michael the screen. His jaw tightened, but I placed a hand over his, reassuring. "It's time to clear the air. All of it." The next afternoon, I met Amanda at a small cafe downtown. She looked different, less polished, almost fragile without her usual armor of designer clothes and meticulously styled hair. She sat clutching her coffee cup like a lifeline, her nails tapping restlessly against the ceramic. "How did you know?" she asked the moment I sat down. "How long have you been collecting evidence?" I stirred my tea, my movements slow, measured. "Since before the wedding. The first time I overheard you and Margaret discussing how to protect the family assets from me, I knew I needed to be careful." "You were spying on us?" Her voice had an edge, but it lacked the bite it once held. "No, Amanda. I was protecting myself. There's a difference." I met her gaze. "The real question is, why? Why spend 5 years trying to invalidate my marriage?" She looked away, shoulders sagging. "Mom was convinced you were after Michael's inheritance. She said we needed a backup plan, a way to prove the marriage wasn't legal if you ever tried to take what wasn't yours. And you never questioned her. Never considered how this would affect your brother." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. She said she was protecting him. A shaky breath. "But yesterday, I found something in her study." She pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Bank statements, letters, legal notices, and then the truth. "She's been embezzling from the family trust," Amanda whispered. "The money she accused you of chasing. She's been stealing it herself. She needed someone to blame if it was ever discovered." A cold, sharp silence stretched between us as the final pieces fell into place. Margaret's iron grip on the family's finances, her relentless obsession with painting me as a gold digger, the desperate attempts to erase my marriage. It was never about protecting Michael, it was about protecting herself. "Does Michael know?" I asked. Amanda shook her head. "I came to you first. I owe you that much." I studied her face, searching for deception. Instead, I found something unexpected: regret. "Thank you for showing me this," I said finally, "but you understand this can't stay buried." "I know," she murmured. "That's why I brought it to you. Mom, she has to be stopped, and I need to make things right." By the time I got home, my mind was racing. Margaret hadn't just tried to destroy my marriage. She had spent years stealing from her own children while setting me up as the perfect scapegoat. Michael was in his office, lost in paperwork. He looked up as I entered, eyes flicking to the folder in my hands. "There's something you need to see," I said softly, "and it's not going to be easy." For the next hour, we pored over the documents together. I held his hand as the betrayal unfolded before him, watching as anger, Hurt and disbelief flickered across his face. All this time, he whispered hoarsely. All this time she was accusing you of being after our money. She was the one stealing it. I squeezed his fingers, grounding him. I'm so sorry, Michael. He looked up at me, his blue eyes rimmed with red. No, I'm the one who's sorry. I should have defended you. I should have seen what they were doing. Instead, I let them push you to the outside while my own mother. His voice broke. I cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my gaze. We'll handle this. Together. For the first time in days, he gave me a small, fragile smile. Together, he echoed, gripping my hand like it was the only thing keeping him afloat. As we sat there, surrounded by the remnants of Margaret's deception, I realized this wasn't the victory I had once imagined. It wasn't about proving I was right or about exposing their schemes. This was something deeper, more painful. But perhaps for the first time in years, it was real. The family meeting was set for Saturday morning at our house. Michael insisted on neutral ground, somewhere outside Margaret's domain, where her manipulations held no power. Amanda arrived first, clutching a fresh stack of documents she'd uncovered. Her face was pale, her fingers trembling slightly as she set the papers on the coffee table. We exchanged a brief glance, unspoken understanding passing between us. Today would change everything. Margaret arrived last. She hesitated for the briefest moment on the threshold, her usual confident stride faltering as she took in the sight of all of us waiting. Her mask slipped back into place just as quickly. What's this about? She demanded, her voice sharp with forced authority. Some sort of intervention. Michael stood, his grip tightening on the folder in his hands. He looked pale, but his voice was steady. Sit down, Mom. We need to talk about the family trust. The color drained from Margaret's face. She opened her mouth, no doubt ready with some excuse. But then Michael laid out the evidence. Bank statements, transfer records, forged signatures, a paper trail of betrayal stretching back years. Margaret tried to interrupt, her voice tight with indignation, but Amanda cut through her protests with a quiet, devastating certainty. We found everything, Mom. The offshore accounts, the gambling debts, all of it. You don't understand, Margaret protested, her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. I was protecting our family's legacy. Michael's voice broke. By stealing from us. By trying to destroy my marriage to cover your tracks. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. I watched as the truth unraveled Margaret's world. Her schemes, her manipulations, all the careful planning, exposed in the harsh, unforgiving light of day. Michael took a breath, steadying himself before delivering the final blow. We've already spoken with the family lawyer. The trust will be restructured. You'll no longer have access to any accounts. Margaret surged to her feet, her voice rising with desperation. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother. For the first time, I spoke. Yes, I said quietly, you are. Which makes this betrayal even worse. Her eyes darted between us, searching for an ally. But there was no one left to save her. And in that moment, I felt no satisfaction, only sadness. For the years of damage, the relationships she had poisoned, the love she had squandered in pursuit of control. The weeks that followed brought irreversible change. Margaret faced legal consequences, though Michael and Amanda insisted on handling the matter privately to avoid public scandal. The trust was completely restructured, placed under transparent oversight with an equal distribution among the siblings. Amanda, for her part, threw herself into making amends, not just with me, but with everyone her mother had driven her to hurt. One evening, over coffee, she hesitated before speaking, her voice unsteady. I was a terrible sister to you, she admitted, her fingers twisting around her mug. I let Mom poison everything. I never once thought for myself. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. We can't change the past, Amanda. But we can decide what comes next. She blinked back tears, nodding. Michael focused on rebuilding, both within himself and within the family company. He implemented new financial controls, ensuring no one could ever manipulate the trust again. One night, as we sat on our back porch, he stared out at the darkened sky, deep in thought. You know what's ironic? He murmured. Mom always claimed you were a threat to our family's stability, but you're the one who saved us from her destruction. I leaned my head against his shoulder, watching the stars. Sometimes the people who seem to threaten our world are actually the ones helping us see it more clearly. 6 months after that fateful Christmas dinner, we hosted another family gathering. The energy in the house was different this time, lighter, more genuine. Amanda arrived with her new boyfriend, who looked at her with an affection that made me smile. Michael's younger cousins played in the yard, their laughter drifting through the open windows. As I set the table, carefully placing the same china we had used that Christmas night, I reflected on how much had changed. The marriage certificate Margaret had fought so hard to erase still sat safely in our files. But it no longer felt like a shield I had to wield in defense. Now it was simply what it was always meant to be, a symbol of our commitment. Michael came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" I turned to face him, smiling softly. How sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. He nodded, pulling me closer. "We're stronger now, aren't we?" "Yes," I said, "because we chose to be." Looking around at our rebuilt family, I realized something. Victory doesn't always mean winning a battle. Sometimes it means healing the wounds that caused it in the first place. And sometimes the best revenge isn't vengeance at all. It's letting the truth shine so brightly that no one can ever hide in the shadows again. I never thought our 10th wedding anniversary dinner would end with a pregnancy announcement, especially not from my husband's 24-year-old mistress. But there we were, sitting in one of the fanciest restaurants in town, when Jessica walked up to our table in a tight red dress. "Surprise?" she said cheerfully, pulling out a chair without asking. "I hope you don't mind me joining your special night, but I have amazing news. My name is Olivia. I'm 38 years old, and for the past year, I've watched my marriage with Marcus fall apart. He worked late, got secretive with his phone, and suddenly became obsessed with going to the gym. I knew about Jessica, his young assistant, long before he started making it obvious. But I stayed quiet for my own reasons. You see, Marcus had a secret, one that even Jessica didn't know about. And tonight, she was about to get a shock. "Jessica, what are you doing here?" Marcus asked, looking nervous. The expensive bottle of wine we were sharing suddenly didn't seem strong enough for this situation. "I'm pregnant," Jessica announced, placing a hand on her stomach. "We're having a baby, Marcus. Isn't that wonderful?" I took a slow sip of my wine, enjoying the moment. Marcus looked pale, his eyes darting toward me as if he was begging for something. Understanding, forgiveness, or maybe just a way out. "Congratulations," I said calmly, reaching for my purse. I pulled out a plain white envelope. "Since we're sharing news, I have something too." "Olivia," Marcus warned, but I ignored him. "Go ahead," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. "You both should read this. Consider it my anniversary gift." Jessica grabbed it eagerly and tore it open. But as she read, her smile faded. I don't understand," she mumbled, looking between Marcus and the papers. Marcus took them from her hands, and I watched as his face turned ghostly white. The papers were medical records, proof that he had a vasectomy 5 years ago. "You see," I said, pouring another glass of wine, "that's what makes your pregnancy announcement so interesting, Jessica. Either it's a miracle or you have something to tell Marcus about your other relationships." Silence filled the table. Jessica's lips moved, but no words came out. Marcus stared at the papers, as if hoping they would somehow change. But Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "This has to be a mistake. Marcus, tell her it's a mistake." Marcus couldn't even look at her. He knew it wasn't a mistake. The vasectomy had been his choice. We had agreed that 2 kids were enough. He never told Jessica because I guess he liked pretending he could still have a future with her. "How long have you known?" Marcus finally whispered. I smiled, remembering the day 6 months ago when I found out about their affair. Instead of confronting him, I hired a private investigator. Turns out, Jessica wasn't just seeing Marcus, she was also involved with her personal trainer. "Long enough," I said, standing up and gathering my things. "Long enough to know Jessica has been spending a lot of time with Brad from the gym. Those private sessions must have been quite the workout." Jessica's face turned bright red. "You had me followed." "Of course not, dear, but next time you post your gym selfies on Instagram, you might want to check the reflections in the mirrors behind you." I placed a few $100 bills on the table, enough to cover the meal and a generous tip for the staff. "Happy anniversary, Marcus," I said, pushing back my chair. "Jessica, I'd say congratulations again. but I think you should call Brad instead. He'll probably be more excited about the baby than my husband." As I walked away, I heard Jessica start crying and Marcus push back his chair, probably to follow me. But I didn't look back. This was only the beginning. I had more surprises planned, and I was going to make sure our marriage ended on my terms. The morning after the restaurant chowdown, I woke up in the guest bedroom to 17 missed calls from Marcus and a flurry of text messages from Jessica, ranging from threats to tearful apologies. I ignored them all and made myself a cup of coffee, settling into the window seat that overlooked our backyard. Marcus hadn't come home last night. I imagined he and Jessica had quite the conversation about her extracurricular activities with Brad. The thought made me smile into my coffee cup. A car door slammed outside, and I watched Marcus trudge up our driveway, still wearing his wrinkled suit from last night. He looked terrible. Exactly how a man who just discovered his mistress was cheating on him should look. "Olivia," he called out as soon as he entered. "We need to talk." I took another sip of coffee. In the sunroom, I replied calmly. He burst in, his tie askew and his eyes bloodshot. "How long have you known about Jessica? About everything?" "Sit down, Marcus," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "You look terrible." He collapsed into the chair, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "Jessica admitted everything. About Brad, about God, Olivia. I've been such a fool." "Yes, you have," I agreed. "But Jessica isn't the only one with secrets, is she?" His head snapped up, wariness creeping into his expression. "What do you mean?" I reached for a second envelope I'd placed on the side table. "You know, when I first hired the private investigator to look into your affair, I expected to find the usual things: hotel receipts, romantic dinners, maybe some incriminating photos. But what I found was so much more interesting." Marcus went very still. "Olivia, did you really think I wouldn't find out about the offshore account?" I asked, pulling out bank statements that showed regular transfers to a Cayman Islands account. "Or about the real estate purchases in Jessica's name?" His face went ashy. "I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can. Just like you can explain why you've been systematically transferring company funds through shell corporations." I laid out more papers, watching his expression crumble. "The forensic accountant I hired was very thorough." "You had no right," he began, but I cut him off. "I had every right. The moment you started using our joint assets to fund your midlife crisis with Jessica, you gave me that right." He slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. "What do you want?" "Divorce papers are being delivered to your office this afternoon. My lawyer has already drafted a settlement agreement that I think you'll find very generous, considering the alternative." "Alternative?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "The alternative is I take everything I've discovered to the board of directors. I'm sure they'd be very interested in learning how their CFO has been manipulating company funds. Not to mention the IRS, they tend to frown on undeclared offshore accounts." Marcus's face had taken on a greenish tinge. "You wouldn't." "Try me." I stood up, gathering the papers. "You have until Friday to sign the settlement agreement. It gives you enough to start over, which is more than you deserve. In return, I get the house, my fair share of our legitimate assets, and your silence." "And if I refuse?" I smiled, the same calm smile I'd worn at the restaurant. "Then envelope number 3 goes to the board of directors, and envelope number 4 goes to the IRS. Your choice." He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant he realized he'd lost. Not just Jessica, not just his dignity, but everything he tried to hide. "When did you get so ruthless?" he asked quietly. "I learned from the best," I replied. "Now I suggest you go shower and change. You have a lot to think about before those divorce papers arrive." As he trudged upstairs, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Jessica. "By the way, Brad says congratulations. He's always wanted to be a father." Within seconds, my phone exploded with messages from her, but I simply turned it off. Let her and Marcus deal with their own mess. I had a future to plan. Looking around the sunroom at the life Marcus and I had built together, I felt a surprising sense of peace. The anger and betrayal were still there, but they'd been transformed into something else. Determination, maybe, or liberation. The sound of the shower running upstairs reminded me that this was just the middle of the story. Marcus would either sign the papers and disappear quietly from my life, or he'd try to fight back and lose everything. Either way, I was prepared. I picked up my coffee cup and walked out to the garden, enjoying the morning sunshine. Our teenagers were away at summer camp, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding at home. By the time they returned, everything would be settled, one way or another. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Divorce papers ready for delivery. Are you sure about the terms? Absolutely, I replied. He'll sign. After all, I still had several more envelopes of evidence safely stored away. Marcus might have thought he was clever with his secrets and lies, but he'd forgotten one important thing. Hell hath no fury like a woman with a good lawyer and an excellent private investigator. Friday arrived with a sense of finality. I sat in my lawyer's office, watching the minutes tick by on an antique clock that probably cost more than most cars. Marcus had until 5 p.m. to sign the divorce settlement. It was currently 4:45. He'll show up, Diana, my lawyer, said confidently while reviewing some paperwork. Men like Marcus always do when they realize they're cornered. She was right. At 4:52, Marcus walked in, looking nothing like the powerful CFO he portrayed at work. His shoulders were slumped, his designer suit wrinkled, and the dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much since our confrontation. The papers? He asked quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. Diana slid the document across her gleaming desk. I watched as Marcus read through each page, his signature appearing at every marked spot like a surrender flag. No arguments, no last-minute negotiations, just the scratch of his pen against paper. Is it done? He asked when he finished. Almost, I said, pulling out one final envelope. This is a copy of everything I have. The offshore accounts, the company fraud, the real estate dealings. Consider it insurance. As long as you honor our agreement, it stays sealed. He nodded, understanding the implicit threat. And Jessica. From what I hear, she and Brad had quite the emotional reunion at Fitness First yesterday. Apparently, he's thrilled about becoming a father. I couldn't help but smile. Though she might want to invest in some waterproof mascara. Marcus winced. I deserved that. Yes, you did. I stood up, gathering my things. Goodbye, Marcus. I suggest you start looking for a new job before the board starts asking questions about those financial discrepancies. As I walked out of the law office, I felt lighter than I had in years. The setting sun painted the city skyline in shades of gold and pink, a perfect backdrop for new beginnings. My phone buzzed with a text from our daughter, Emma. How was your anniversary dinner? Did Dad like the gift you planned? I smiled, thinking of how to respond. Our kids would learn about the divorce soon enough. But for now, they deserved to enjoy their summer camp without adult drama. It was quite memorable, I texted back. We'll talk when you get home. Later that evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, watching the stars emerge. The private investigator's final bill had arrived. Money well spent for the freedom it bought me. Jessica had finally stopped texting, probably too busy dealing with her own complicated love life to harass me anymore. My phone rang. It was Diana. Marcus just called, she said. He's accepting a position with a firm in Seattle. Says he'll be gone by the end of the month. Good, I replied. The farther the better. You know, Diana said, her tone thoughtful, in all my years practicing family law, I've never seen someone handle a cheating spouse quite so efficiently. Most people let emotions take over. I thought about the months of careful planning, of building my case piece by piece while Marcus thought he was being so clever with his deceptions. The best revenge isn't about getting even, I told her. It's about getting free. After hanging up, I went inside and opened the safe in my home office. Inside was one last envelope, the one I'd never needed to use. It contained the most damaging evidence of all, the kind that could have sent Marcus to prison. But I'd chosen a different path, one that let me walk away with my dignity and enough security to start fresh. The next morning, I woke up to a different kind of silence in the house. Not the heavy silence of secrets and lies, but the peaceful quiet of a clean slate. I had my home, my freedom, and best of all, I'd never have to attend another awkward anniversary dinner where my husband's mistress announced her miraculous pregnancy. Life has a way of surprising you. Sometimes it's with a devastating betrayal, and sometimes it's with the discovery of your own strength. Marcus had taught me an invaluable lesson, though not the one he'd intended. Never underestimate a woman who appears to be looking the other way. As for that infamous anniversary dinner, It became something of a legend among my friends. The night a cheating husband and his pregnant mistress learned that karma sometimes arrives in a crisp white envelope, served with a side of perfect timing. I kept the medical records from that first envelope, though. You never know when proof of a vasectomy might come in handy, especially if Jessica ever decides to try her pregnancy announcement routine with another unsuspecting man. After all, the best stories are the ones where justice is served with a smile. Elizabeth laughed as she held the deed to the beachfront house. I stood quietly, holding the papers for the old family farmland, trying not to show my frustration. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 35, I was watching my stepsister take what she thought was the best part of our grandmother's inheritance. She looked proud, just like our mother, who smirked from across the room. "Oh, don't be upset, Olivia," my stepmother Marianne said with fake sympathy. "At least you got something, even if it's just dirt." She and Elizabeth exchanged smug glances like they always did. I remembered spending summers on that farmland with Gran, helping her in a garden and listening to stories about how much Grandpa loved the land. "The land speaks to those who listen," she used to say with a knowing smile. Elizabeth scrolled through her phone, excited. "The beachfront house will make a great rental. I can charge $2,000 a night. What are you going to do with your land, Olivia? Grow corn?" I carefully put the deed in my bag. "I have plans," I said, thinking of Gran's last words to me. "The greatest treasures aren't always seen by greedy eyes." "You should sell," Marian added. "That land will cost too much to maintain. Your father and I think." "My father?" I cut her off. "The man you convinced to skip this will reading because you promised to handle everything fairly." Marian's smile faltered. "He trusts me. Besides, Elizabeth knows real estate. The beach house is worth much more than that land. 10 times more," Elizabeth corrected. "I already have agents begging to list it." I stood up. "If you'll excuse me, I have a property to check on." "Don't work too hard," Elizabeth called. "I hear farming is great exercise. Maybe you'll finally lose those last 10 pounds. I ignored her and drove to the farmland. The winding roads brought back memories of childhood. The old wooden gate still creaked, and the sun cast long shadows over the fields. At the barn, I opened Gran's last letter. My hands shook as I read. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you have the farmland and Elizabeth has the beach house. Don't worry, my smart girl. You always listened when I talked about your grandfather's work. Remember those summers you spent helping him with surveys? They weren't just games. Your grandfather was a geological engineer. He spent years studying this land. In the barn, behind the blue tractor, you'll find a locked chest. The key is with this letter. Inside are his maps and research. This land isn't just dirt, it's your grandfather's legacy. He chose you for it long ago. Trust your instincts. Patience reveals what greed conceals. All my love, Gran." A small brass key fell from the envelope. My heart raced as I hurried to the barn. The chest was exactly where she said. Inside were stacks of maps and documents. As I spread them out on the floor, my eyes widened. Grandpa's research suggested something incredible lay beneath this land. I quickly pulled out my phone and started looking for a geological survey company. 3 days later, I sat across from James Anderson, a lead geologist. He studied Grandpa's notes with growing excitement. "Miss Parker," he said, looking up in surprise, "these surveys are detailed. Your grandfather discovered something important. Would you like us to do a modern survey?" I thought of Elizabeth's smug face, Marianne's arrogance, and Gran's wise words. "Yes," I said, smiling. "Let's find out exactly what my grandfather knew." Elizabeth thought she won with the beach house, but soon she would realize my worthless land held something far more valuable. Patience reveals what greed conceals, and this was just the beginning. The next month passed in a blur of activity. Pioneer Survey Corps' team became a regular presence on the farmland, their equipment dotting the fields Elizabeth had so quickly dismissed. I kept everything quiet, following Gran's wisdom about patience. Then came the call that changed everything. "Miss Parker." James Anderson's voice was barely containing his excitement. "We need you at the site immediately. There's something you have to see." I arrived to find a cluster of geologists huddled around their equipment, talking in animated whispers. James rushed over, clutching a stack of reports. "We've confirmed your grandfather's theories," he announced, spreading out several detailed charts. "Miss Parker, you're sitting on one of the largest oil deposits discovered in the region in the last 50 years. The preliminary estimates suggest, well, let's just say your worthless farmland is worth significantly more than any beachfront property." I stood there, letting the news sink in. All those summers helping Grandpa with his special projects. All those mysterious smiles Gran would share with him, they knew. They'd known all along. "How soon before this becomes public knowledge?" I asked, thinking about Elizabeth and Marianne's inevitable reaction. "We've already had interest from several major oil companies," James replied. "Word travels fast in this industry. I'd expect calls within the week." Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Elizabeth's number flashed on the screen. I declined the call, watching as 3 more came in rapid succession. Then came the text messages. "Why are there survey trucks on your property?" "Kill me immediately." "Does this have something to do with what Gran's letter said?" I smiled, remembering how quickly Elizabeth had dismissed the sealed letter Gran had left me, calling it probably just sentimental garbage. Now suddenly, she was interested. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find Marianne and Elizabeth waiting in the lobby. Elizabeth had traded her usual designer casual wear for a sophisticated business suit, while Marianne wore her most charming smile. "Olivia, darling," Marianne purred, stepping forward. "We've been trying to reach you. As family, we're naturally concerned about all this activity on your property." "Really?" I kept my voice neutral. "I thought it was just worthless dirt. Isn't that what you called it?" Elizabeth pushed forward. "Look, maybe we were a bit hasty in our judgment. Obviously, Gran had her reasons for the way she divided things. Perhaps we should discuss combining our inheritances? A partnership of sorts." I thought about all the times they'd excluded me from family events, the snide remarks about my career choices, the way they'd manipulated my father. "A partnership, like the kind of partnership you've shown me these past 12 years. That's all in the past," Elizabeth waved dismissively. "We're talking about the future now, my business acumen combined with your land. It makes perfect sense." Actually, I pulled out the morning's paper, showing them the headline about a major oil discovery in the region. "I've already entered into a partnership." Pioneer Oil made quite an attractive offer. Marianne's smile faltered. "You can't be serious. You need to discuss these decisions with family first." "Family?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like how you discussed manipulating the will reading with my father? Or how Elizabeth discussed selling Gran's antiques before she was even buried?" "That's different." Elizabeth snapped, her composed facade cracking. "You don't know anything about business. You'll ruin this opportunity." I opened my office door, revealing the team of executives waiting inside. "I think you'll find I know quite a bit about business. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting about my worthless inheritance." "Your father will hear about this," Marianne threatened. "Yes, he will," I agreed. "In fact, he's in that meeting." Turns out, when I told him about Gran's letter and Grandpa's surveys, he was very interested in being part of this project. He's been quite curious about why you insisted he skip the will reading. The color drained from Marianne's face as my father appeared in the doorway. His expression hardened as he looked at his wife, years of manipulation suddenly clear to him. "Marianne Elizabeth," he said coldly, "I believe it's time we had a family discussion about honesty and respect. But right now, my daughter has an important business meeting." As they left, Elizabeth turned back, her face a mix of anger and disbelief. "This isn't fair. That property was supposed to be worthless." "Life rarely gives us what we think we deserve," I replied, remembering Gran's words. "Sometimes it gives us exactly what we've earned." The meeting went perfectly. By the end of the day, I had signed a contract that would not only preserve the farmland's natural beauty, but would also generate more wealth than Elizabeth's beachfront property could make in 100 years. That evening, I visited Gran's grave, placing fresh flowers by her headstone. "You knew all along, didn't you?" I whispered. "You and Grandpa both knew exactly what you were doing." I could almost hear her gentle laugh, see the twinkle in her eye as she shared her favorite saying one last time. "Patience reveals what greed conceals." As I drove home past the farmland, watching the sunset paint the fields in gold, I realized Gran had left me more than just oil-rich land. She'd given me the chance to show Elizabeth and Marianne that true value isn't always visible at first glance, whether in property or in people. The real question was, what would I do with this newfound power? The transformations that followed were far more satisfying than any revenge could have been. The first change came at home. My father finally saw Marianne and Elizabeth's true colors. The carefully crafted manipulations they'd built over years crumbled in the face of undeniable evidence. "I've been such a fool," Dad said one evening as we sat on the old porch swing at the farmhouse, which I decided to restore rather than demolish. All these years, I let them convince me they had everyone's best interests at heart. The divorce papers were already filed. Marianne's attempts to claim a portion of the oil profits had been swiftly dismissed by the courts, especially after evidence emerged of her attempting to manipulate the will reading. Elizabeth's beachfront property dreams weren't faring much better. The real estate market had taken an unexpected downturn, and the property taxes were proving more than she could handle. Her social media posts about being a successful property mogul grew increasingly desperate. But I didn't feel the satisfaction they expected me to. Instead, I thought about Gran's other lessons, the ones about grace and wisdom. One morning, I received a surprising visit from Elizabeth. Gone was the designer wardrobe and superior attitude. She looked tired, worn down by reality. "I'm selling the beach house," she admitted, staring into her coffee cup. "I can't afford the maintenance, and no one's renting at the prices I need." I watched her for a moment, remembering Gran's words about how victory without compassion is hollow. "I might have a proposition for you," I said carefully. Elizabeth looked up, suspicion warring with hope in her eyes. "The oil company wants to develop an eco-resort on part of the property," I explained. "Something sustainable, showcasing both the natural beauty and the responsible energy development. It needs someone with hospitality experience to manage it." "Are you offering me a job?" she asked incredulously. "I'm offering you a chance," I corrected. "Not because we're family, but because despite everything, I think you're capable of more than what Marianne taught you to be." The resort project became our common ground. Elizabeth's experience in hospitality, freed from Marianne's toxic influence, actually proved valuable. Slowly, tentatively, we built a working relationship that might someday even become a real sisterhood. Marianne, of course, was livid. "You're choosing her over me?" she screeched at Elizabeth during one of her dramatic appearances. "After everything I taught you." "That's exactly why," Elizabeth replied, finally standing up to her mother. "Everything you taught me about manipulating people, about taking what we want, it only led to misery. Olivia's showing me there's another way." The farmland flourished under the careful development plan we created. The oil extraction used the latest environmental protection methods, leaving most of the surface untouched. We converted the old barn into a visitor center, displaying Grandpa's surveys and Gran's gardening tools, telling their love story alongside the land's history. Dad found healing there too, spending weekends helping restore the old farmhouse. "Your mother loved this place," he said one day as we planted a new vegetable garden. "She always said you had her spirit, seeing the beauty in things others overlooked." A year after the oil discovery, I stood in Gran's restored garden, watching families tour the educational center we built. Elizabeth was in her element, explaining our sustainable development practices to visitors. She'd found her own path, separate from Marianne's influence. I pulled out Gran's letter, worn now from many readings. "Patience reveals what greed conceals" had turned out to be more than just advice about the oil. It was a lesson about people too, about giving them time to reveal their true selves, for better or worse. The land had given us more than wealth. It had given us clarity. Marianne's true nature was exposed, Elizabeth found redemption, and I discovered strength I never knew I had. Dad joined me in the garden, carrying Gran's old watering can. "She would be proud," he said softly, "not just of what you did with the land, but how you did it." I smiled, looking out over the fields where Grandpa had once walked, methodically documenting what lay beneath. The greatest treasure wasn't the oil. It was the wisdom my grandparents had passed down, waiting for the right moment to bloom. "The land speaks to those who listen," I murmured, repeating Gran's words. Now I understood she hadn't just been talking about oil or farming. She'd been teaching me about patience, about looking deeper than the surface, and about the kind of person I wanted to be. As the sun set over the flourishing fields, I knew that some inheritances aren't measured in money or property. They're measured in the wisdom we choose to embrace and the grace we choose to show, even to those who may not seem to deserve it. That was Gran's true legacy, and it was worth more than all the oil in the world. Let's keep our marriage private from now on, Marcus said casually over dinner. His words hit me like a bomb. After 15 years together, he suddenly wanted to keep our marriage a secret. I stared at him, my fork frozen in the air. Private? I repeated. Why? Marcus shifted in his chair, avoiding my eyes. It's for work. My new promotion. It's complicated. I watched him closely. His fingers tapped nervously on the table. He had been acting strange lately, working late, glued to his phone, suddenly obsessed with the gym. I had ignored the signs, but now I couldn't anymore. Of course, I said softly. He sighed in relief, thinking I believed him. That night, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed. I wasn't the type to check his messages, but something felt off. A preview flashed on the screen. Can't wait for next week, baby. Found the perfect dress for our ceremony. My stomach dropped. My hands steady. I picked up the phone and unlocked it. Message after message filled the screen. Marcus had been planning a secret wedding with Emma, his 24-year-old assistant. He didn't want a divorce because he didn't want to split our assets. Instead, he planned to marry Emma in a private ceremony while keeping me as his legal wife. Just on paper. I put the phone back exactly as I found it. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. I emailed Linda, my best friend and a private investigator. Then James, my lawyer brother. Finally Sarah, Marcus's boss and an old friend of mine. Looking forward to coffee tomorrow, I wrote to Sarah. There's something about your new assistant you should know. When Marcus came to bed, he kissed my forehead. I love you, he whispered. I kept my breathing steady, pretending to be asleep. He had no idea that by tomorrow, his secret plan would start falling apart. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye as usual. As soon as he drove off, I called Linda. About your email, she said. Your husband's been busy. Let's meet for coffee. An hour later, I sat with Linda, looking at the evidence she had gathered. Pictures of Marcus and Emma, money transfers to a secret account, $200,000 so far. They booked Silver Lake Resort for their ceremony next Saturday, Linda said. Emma's been telling people she's marrying a divorced man. I sipped my coffee. And the money? Linda nodded. He's been moving small amounts to keep it hidden. My phone buzzed. Sarah confirming our lunch. Another step in my plan. I thought about the years I had spent building a life with Marcus. While I was planning our future, he was planning his escape. But he made one big mistake. He underestimated me. As I drove to meet Sarah, my phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. I smiled and replied, of course, honey, take all the time you need. He had no idea his plan was already crumbling. I grabbed my folder of evidence and walked into the building, ready to take back control of my life. Sarah's face darkened as she looked through the photos and messages I'd brought. I knew something was off about their dynamic, she said, setting down her coffee. Emma's been pushing for a promotion, and Marcus has been supporting it aggressively. Now I understand why. I watched my friend process the information, her expression shifting from shock to anger. As chief operating officer, Sarah had been the one to promote Marcus to department head last year. She trusted him, mentored him. The ceremony is next Saturday, she asked, her voice tight. I nodded. At Silver Lake Resort, they're telling everyone he's divorced. Sarah picked up her phone, typing quickly. Not anymore. I just canceled their venue reservation. Being COO has its perks. Silver Lake Resort is one of our corporate partners. But that was just the beginning. Over lunch, Sarah revealed more about Marcus's recent business dealings. He'd been pushing for complete control over the department's budget, unusual for his position. Now we knew why. He'd been planning to access more funds. I'm launching a formal investigation into his financial decisions, Sarah said. And Emma, well, let's just say her position is under review. Back at home, I maintained my routine. When Marcus called to say he'd be missing dinner again, I responded with understanding. Don't work too hard, honey, I said sweetly, while simultaneously emailing his financial records to my brother James. The next morning, my phone rang early. It was James, his voice urgent. Liv, you need to see this. Those transfers Marcus has been making, they're not just going to a private account. He's been investing in properties under Emma's name. My hands clenched around the phone. Using our money. Your money, James corrected. Most of the transfers came from the account linked to your photography studio. He's been systematically moving your business profits. I closed my eyes, feeling a cold anger settle in my chest. The photography studio was my life's work, built from years of dedication and sacrifice. Marcus had been dipping into it to build a nest egg with his girlfriend. "What do you need from me?" James asked. "Everything," I replied. "Every document, every transfer, every property purchase. I want it all traced and documented." The next few days passed in a blur of calculated moves. While Marcus thought I was working at my studio, I was actually setting up meetings with financial advisors and lawyers. Linda kept tracking their movements, providing regular updates about their scrambling attempts to salvage their ceremony plans. "They've tried booking 3 other venues," she reported. "Each one mysteriously canceled." Emma's getting frustrated. She keeps posting angry messages about people interfering with true love. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost, but then I remembered the messages, the way they laughed about deceiving me, planning to reduce my marriage to nothing but paperwork while they lived their perfect life using my money. Thursday evening, Marcus came home looking stressed. The ceremony was supposed to be in 2 days, and nothing was going as planned. I watched him pick at his dinner, dark circles under his eyes. "Rough day?" I asked innocently. He ran a hand through his hair. "Just work stuff, nothing for you to worry about." "Of course not," I smiled. "Oh, by the way, Sarah called earlier. She mentioned something about a department audit." Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. "Sarah called you? What? What did she say?" "Not much," I shrugged. "Just checking in. We're having lunch tomorrow, actually. It's been too long since we caught up." The color drained from his face. I continued eating calmly, watching him try to maintain his composure. His phone kept buzzing. Probably Emma, panicking about their ruined plans. "I need to make a call," he muttered, rushing from the table. I could hear him in the other room, his voice urgent and hushed. "We need to postpone. No, listen to me. Everything's falling apart. I don't know how." While he was distracted, I forwarded Linda's latest report to Sarah and James. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial misconduct, misuse of company resources, unauthorized fund transfers. Marcus hadn't just planned to betray our marriage, he compromised his professional integrity in the process. That night, as we lay in bed, Marcus reached for my hand, something he hadn't done in months. I let him take it, feeling his palm sweaty against mine. "Liv," he said softly, "you know I love you, right?" I turned to look at him, this man I'd loved for 15 years, who'd planned to reduce our life together to a secret shame while he built a new life with someone else. "Of course," I replied, my voice steady. "We should keep that private too, shouldn't we?" He flinched at my words but said nothing. We both lay there in silence, but while he was probably worrying about his crumbling plans, I was thinking about tomorrow. About Sarah's scheduled department meeting, about the documents waiting in James' office, about the truth that was about to shatter Marcus's carefully constructed facade. Tomorrow, he would learn that keeping our marriage private had been his biggest mistake, because while he'd been planning his new life with Emma, I'd been ensuring he'd lose everything he was trying to steal from me. I closed my eyes, listening to his uneasy breathing beside me. In less than 24 hours, his perfect plan would completely unravel, and I would be wide awake to watch it all unfold. Friday morning arrived with a storm, both literally and figuratively. Marcus left early for work, kissing my cheek absently. "I might be late tonight," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Actually," I replied, grabbing my car keys, "I'm heading to the office too. Sarah invited me to sit in on the department meeting." He froze, his hand on the doorknob. "What department meeting?" "Oh, didn't she tell you? The whole team's gathering at 9. Something about financial reviews and policy changes." I smiled, watching the color drain from his face. "I'll see you there, honey." I arrived at the office building just as Sarah was gathering everyone in the conference room. Emma was there, her young face glowing with artificial confidence. She faltered when she saw me, quickly looking away. Marcus sat rigidly in his chair, his eyes darting between me, Emma, and Sarah. Sarah stood at the head of the table, her expression professional but stern. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to address some serious concerns about departmental conduct and financial irregularities." The next hour was a masterclass in professional demolition. Sarah methodically outlined every unauthorized transfer, every misused resource, every breach of company policy. With each revelation, Marcus seemed to shrink in his chair while Emma's perfect makeup couldn't hide her growing panic. Furthermore, Sarah continued, we've discovered evidence of an inappropriate relationship between a department head and his subordinate, including the misuse of company funds to purchase properties under false pretenses. Emma burst into tears. He told me he was divorced. He said the money was his. Marcus finally found his voice. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Please do, I said quietly, speaking for the first time. Explain how you plan to marry your girlfriend while keeping me as your legal wife. Explain how you use my studio's profits to buy properties for your new life. I'm particularly interested in hearing about the private ceremony planned for tomorrow. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Marcus, then to me, then to Emma, who had suddenly stopped crying. You knew? Marcus stammered. Of course I knew, I replied calmly. I've known since the moment you asked to keep our marriage private. I just waited to see how far you'd go. Sarah cleared her throat. Marcus, Emma, please proceed to HR. Security will escort you. The rest of you are dismissed. As people filed out, some offering me sympathetic glances, others avoiding eye contact entirely, Marcus made one last desperate attempt. Liv, please, he begged. We can talk about this. We can fix things. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Fix things. Like how you plan to fix our marriage by making it a secret, or how you fixed my business accounts by emptying them. I was going to pay it back, he protested weakly. No need, I replied. The company's legal team has already frozen all the accounts and properties. My brother James is handling the recovery of my assets, and since you're so interested in keeping things private, I'm sure you'll appreciate the discretion of the divorce proceedings. Emma, who had been quietly edging toward the door, suddenly turned back. You can't do this. We're in love. I looked at this young woman, barely older than an intern, who thought she could build her happiness on the ruins of my life. Love? You don't even know him, the real him, but you will now. Security arrived to escort them out. As they left, I heard Emma's voice rising hysterically in the hallway. What do you mean the properties aren't in my name? What about the money you promised? I sat alone in the conference room for a moment, letting the morning's events settle. Sarah returned, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. You know what's funny? He really thought he was being clever, keeping our marriage private while he built a new life. He never realized he was giving me exactly what I needed, time to protect myself. That evening, I returned to an empty house. Marcus's belongings would be collected later under supervision. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my favorite chair, the one with the perfect view of the garden I planted when we first moved in. My phone buzzed with a message from Linda. Emma's posting on social media again. Something about betrayal and true love being crushed by cruel manipulators. Want me to send screenshots? I replied with a simple no need and turned off my phone. The storm had passed, and in its wake, I found not devastation but clarity. Marcus had wanted to keep our marriage private, hidden away like a shameful secret. Instead, he hid in himself. His true nature, his dishonesty, his betrayal. 2 months later, my divorce was finalized with little fanfare. Marcus, facing company investigations and legal proceedings for financial misconduct, agreed to my terms without argument. Emma had long since disappeared, probably in search of another divorced man to rescue. I kept the house, my studio, and every penny he tried to steal. More importantly, I kept my dignity. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making a scene or fighting back loudly. It's quietly dismantling someone's perfect plan while they think you're in the dark. Marcus had wanted privacy. In the end, that's exactly what he got, the privacy to reflect on his choices alone. Marcus shoved a stack of papers onto the kitchen table. At 2 a.m. Sign here, here, and here, he ordered, tapping the pages. His voice was cold, like he was talking to a stranger, not his wife of 8 years. I looked at him, messy hair, tired eyes, and the faint smell of perfume on his shirt. Now, Emma, he snapped, pushing a pen toward me. I don't have all night. The kitchen, once filled with warm memories, now felt like an interrogation room. You get nothing, he continued with a smirk. No alimony, no property. You leave with what you came in with. I took the pen and calmly signed each page. Marcus watched, expecting tears or protests. Instead, I felt relief. He had no idea I'd been preparing for this moment. I had noticed the signs: late nights, secret texts, password changes. But 6 months ago, a lipstick stain on his collar confirmed my suspicions. That night, I called Diana, my best friend, who was a paralegal, and James Mitchell, the best divorce lawyer in town. "You're making this easy," Marcus said, gathering the papers. "I thought you'd fight." I smiled, thinking about the documents hidden in my safety deposit box and the proof I had collected over 3 months. "Why fight? You made your choice." He hesitated, not used to my confidence. "Megan's different," he said. "She's ambitious, not stuck in a boring teaching job." I thought of my students, my investments, and the future I had carefully planned. "I hope she's everything you want." Marcus stuffed the papers into his briefcase and pulled out his phone, probably texting Megan about his win. "Don't try anything stupid, Emma," he warned. As he walked to the door, I said, "Marcus." He stopped. "You might want to read what you just had me sign." He scoffed, but I saw a flicker of doubt. "I know what's in them. I wrote them myself." "Did you?" I asked. "Or did your friend Steve from the golf club do it?" His face darkened. "How did you?" "Good night, Marcus," I said, turning to make tea. After he left, I sat at the table, hands around my mug. I had spent months gathering proof, setting the trap. Marcus thought he was outsmarting me, but he never saw it coming. Steve, his so-called legal expert, was a fraud. My lawyer James figured it out immediately. Those papers Marcus forced me to sign, they weren't what he thought they were. I sent 2 texts. To Diana, "It's done." He took the bait. To James, "Time for phase 2. Then I went upstairs to pack Marcus's things. By morning, he would realize the truth. But tonight, I smiled, knowing he had just signed away everything, without even reading the fine print. The first call came at 7:15 a.m. I watched Marcus's name flash across my phone screen as I sipped my morning coffee on the porch. 4 calls, straight to voicemail. Then the texts started. "What did you do?" "These aren't the right papers." "Answer your fate only." I set my phone aside and watched the sunrise, thinking about the exact moment Marcus would be realizing what he'd done. The divorce papers he'd had me sign weren't divorce papers at all. They were documents transferring all our joint assets into my name, along with a sworn statement admitting to his infidelity and financial misconduct. Deanna arrived at 8 a.m., right on schedule. "How are you holding up?" she asked, setting her laptop on the kitchen table. "Better than Marcus, I guess," I replied, showing her the stream of increasingly frantic messages on my phone. "He just called the office," Diana said, a smile playing at her lips. "James told him he'd be happy to meet with him next week." You should have heard him spluttering. The doorbell rang at 8:30. Marcus stood there, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his face a mix of rage and panic. "What the hell did you make me sign?" he demanded. I stepped aside, letting him enter. Diana's presence at the kitchen table made him falter. "Who's she?" "Diana Peterson, paralegal for Mitchell and Associates," Diana said professionally. "Please have a seat. We have some matters to discuss." Marcus's face went pale. "Mitchell and Associates, James Mitchell's firm?" "The very same," I said quietly. "Coffee?" He ignored my offer, pulling the papers from his briefcase and slapping them on the table. "These aren't the divorce papers Steve prepared. You switched them." "No, Marcus," I corrected him. "Those are exactly the papers you brought last night. You just never bothered to read them carefully. Too busy texting Megan, I suppose." Diana opened her laptop. "Mr. Turner, shall we review what you've actually signed? First, there's the transfer of all joint assets into Mrs. Turner's name, which you've authorized with your signature on pages 3, 7, and 12. Then there's your sworn statement regarding your affair with Megan Porter, including dates, locations, and financial records of gifts purchased using joint funds." Marcus collapsed into a chair, his face ashen. "This isn't legal. I'll fight it." "With Steve's help?" I asked innocently. "Your unlicensed friend who's currently under investigation for practicing law without a license? That should go well." "You set me up," he whispered. "No, Marcus, you set yourself up. I just made sure everything was documented properly." Diana pulled out another folder. We also have evidence of your attempt to defraud Mrs. Turner at presenting false legal documents in the middle of the night, which I should mention was captured on the security cameras installed 3 months ago. Marcus's head snapped up. What cameras? I gestured to the subtle lens in the corner of the kitchen. Amazing what you don't notice when you're feeling superior. Why are you doing this? He demanded, his voice cracking. For revenge? For protection, I corrected him. I gave you 8 years of my life, Marcus. I supported your career, managed our home, and believed in our future. And you repaid that by trying to leave me with nothing. Diana slid a new set of papers across the table. These are the actual divorce papers, properly prepared by Mitchell and Associates. You'll find the terms quite different from what you had in mind. Marcus stared at the papers, his hands shaking. I don't have to sign these. True, I agreed. But then we'll proceed with charges of attempted fraud, and Steve will likely face serious legal consequences for his part in this. Your choice. You can't prove. Actually, Diana interrupted, turning her laptop to show him, we can prove everything. The surveillance footage, your text messages to Steve about planning this, the illegal documents he prepared. Would you like to see more? Marcus slumped in his chair, the full weight of his situation finally hitting him. I'll lose my job if this gets out. You should have thought about that before trying to ambush your wife with fake papers at 2 a.m., Diana said crisply. I watched my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, as the reality of his position sank in. The man who'd smirked at me just hours ago, so confident in his superiority, now looked small and defeated. You have 24 hours to review these papers with a proper attorney, I said, standing up. After that, we proceed with fraud charges. Oh, and Marcus, the next time you try to trick someone into signing something in the middle of the night, make sure they're not smarter than you. He gathered the papers with trembling hands and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. Emma, Save it, I cut him off. Your 24 hours start now. After you left, Diana turned to me with a grin. That went even better than we expected. I sat down, finally letting out the breath I'd been holding. Think he'll sign? He'd be an idiot not to, she replied. Though he's already proven he's capable of making monumentally stupid decisions. I picked up my phone, now silent after hours of constant buzzing. The last text from Marcus simply read, You've changed. No, I whispered to myself. I just stopped letting you believe I was less than you. Marcus signed the papers exactly 23 hours and 12 minutes after leaving our house. James called to inform me while I was grading papers in my classroom after school. He tried to negotiate, James said, amusement clear in his voice. But when I mentioned the video footage of him trying to coerce you into signing fraudulent documents at 2 a.m., he became remarkably cooperative. I looked around my classroom at the student artwork decorating the walls and the math problems still written on the whiteboard. This dead-end teaching job had given me more satisfaction than Marcus could ever understand. What about Megan? I asked, thinking of the young intern who'd fallen for Marcus's promises. She was quite interested to learn she wasn't the first, James replied. Apparently, your documentation of his previous affairs was quite thorough. She's already cleared out her desk at the office. That evening, Diana came over with a bottle of wine to help me pack up the last of Marcus's things. Have you heard about Steve? She asked, carefully wrapping a photo frame. Is Golf Buddy the fake lawyer? No, what happened? The Bar Association is investigating him. Turns out you weren't the first person he tried to scam with fraudulent legal documents, but you were the first one smart enough to catch him. I sat down on the couch, thinking about how differently things could have gone if I hadn't noticed that first lipstick stain, if I hadn't made those crucial phone calls, if I had remained the passive, accommodating wife Marcus thought I was. You know what's funny? I said, twirling my wine glass. Marcus always claimed I was bad with details. Said that's why I was just a teacher instead of someone ambitious like him. But it was the details that brought him down. A week later, I received an email from Marcus's company. The board had reviewed the evidence of his misconduct, including his attempt to fraudulently force his wife to sign away her rights at 2 a.m., and decided his position as chief financial officer was no longer tenable. Your detailed records were quite helpful, the HR director wrote. We're conducting a full audit of his department. I forwarded the email to James, who responded with a single line. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being thorough. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. I kept the house, half of Marcus's pension, and most importantly, my dignity. Marcus moved to a smaller city to work for a much smaller company, his reputation in shambles after the truth about his attempted fraud came out. Megan tried to contact me once, wanting to explain her side. I sent back a simple response. The security cameras caught your side quite clearly. She never wrote again. 1 year after that night in the kitchen, I sat in the same spot where Marcus had tried to strip me of everything. But now the house was truly mine, redecorated to my taste without Marcus's sophisticated preferences overshadowing mine. Deanna joined me for dinner, bringing a small gift-wrapped package. "Happy Independence Day," she said with a grin. Inside was a frame containing the security camera photo from that night, Marcus smugly pushing papers across the table, not knowing he was documenting his own downfall. "A reminder," Diana said, "that sometimes the best defense is letting your opponent think they're winning." I hung the photo in my home office, next to my teaching certificates and a note from a former student thanking me for believing in them. It served as a reminder that strength doesn't always look like what people expect. Last week, I ran into Marcus's mother at the grocery store. She started to turn away, but I called out a greeting. "I heard you got a promotion," she said stiffly. "Head of the elementary school curriculum department." "Yes," I replied. "Turns out being good with details is valuable in education too." She nodded, then hesitated. He's not doing well. That young girl left him for someone more successful." "That's unfortunate," I said sincerely. "I hope he learns from it." As I walked away, I heard her murmur, "We all underestimated you." That night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Marcus. "I'm sorry. I should have appreciated what I had." I looked at his message for a long moment, thinking about the man who had stormed into our kitchen that night, so certain of his superiority, so confident in his plan to leave me with nothing. "Thank you for the apology," I wrote back, "but you were wrong that night. I didn't get nothing in the divorce. I got myself back." Then I blocked his number, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Sometimes the best victory isn't in fighting back, it's in being prepared, being patient, and letting karma do its work. Marcus had tried to write me off as simple, unambitious, and easily manipulated. Instead, he learned that underestimating someone is the biggest mistake you can make, especially when that someone has been taking notes all along.